welcome to Daikaiju Network, where we have a healthy obsession with kaiju. I'm your co-host, Kent, and with me is your other co-host,
Jason. How's it going, everyone? You may see something a little bit different this time around.
Yeah, you got a booger right here. That's
oh,
what you
really?
got.
Okay.
So what it keeps running out of your nose. What we're going to be doing today is discussing the brand new Godzilla movie, fresh out of Toho, Godzilla Minus One, which hit U.S. theaters here a handful of days ago. But before we do that, Jason, the usual.
Yeah, if you see a subscribe button down below or above wherever you're watching us from, make sure to hit that subscribe button, as well as smash or stump the like button. And if you have any comments regarding to the movie that we're going to be currently discussing here, make sure to have your comments written down below. And you can find everything Daikaiju Network all in one place at our Linktree URL right there, smack dab on your screen, /Daikaiju Network. And we're available on the following video platforms such as YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Facebook, and as well as X, and as well as the following audio platforms that we're available on, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and as well as Podbean. And you can find both video and audio versions of our episodes right there on our website at daikaijunetwork.com.
All right, so let's go ahead. Godzilla Minus One, a very anticipated film, especially over here in the States. The movie financially, when combined with not only what the Japanese have made, but also what it's made so far over here, the film is a financial success. It's also so far looking to be a critical success as well. And so,
because when I checked it here yesterday, according to Box Office Mojo, I think it was nearing the $5 million mark as far as the domestic. And then I think worldwide, it was right around 20-something million dollars. So it was kind of nearing 30 million in total so far.
And the thing that really stinks about its release, though, is the fact that whoever is distributing it here in the States, I don't think has really used any money to advertise it in a wide enough spectrum to really get people into theaters. Because not only, although I will say the Friday night showing I went to, there was like 30 some odd people in it, which I thought was decent turnout. And then last night, probably because I live in Michigan and the Wolverines were playing the Big Ten game last night, there were probably no more than 10. It was like a third.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's been sparse.
Yeah, pretty much. Toho was the only distributor for this film, so they probably should have done a little bit more marketing. I would say probably should have done a little bit more research as far as like some of the other major studios, especially over here, how they do some of their marketing and stuff. So they're probably not quite used to this sort of major release.
Well, and I mean, as we've talked about before in various previous episodes, where Toho and just the Japanese studio system over there, they don't throw the sorts of money at their film projects like Hollywood does over here. And so I think in many ways it's still kind of, they're still playing by their own rules as far as how they build and distribute a film. We haven't done a brand new movie in a while. I'm not entirely sure. I would say off yet.
Yeah, I would say the last time that we did a brand new movie review and discussion was Godzilla vs. Kong. So that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, like 2.5 years, over 2.5 years ago.
Close to 3 years.
Well, yeah, I know. It's one thing when you're talking about an older film because then you can get some history involved to the building up of the film. Here, it's just like, Yeah, it's a brand new movie. um, I guess I could start off by saying definitely, as always in the past, there will be spoilers here. If you have not seen the film and you're, not, and you're wanting to go in unspoiled, come
You're
back to later.
warned.
And
Maybe I could put in a little banner here saying warning spoiler discussion here.
yeah, but I mean, I don't think I don't think you can have, and I've said this ad nauseum before. I don't think you can have a real discussion about any sort of thing like a movie or even a novel without giving away almost entirely what happens, because
Right.
otherwise
Yeah,
I've seen it in.
I know we've sort of talked about this before in the past when we discussed some of the new movies uh, coming out or that were just out for a while, but are recent. That I mean, if no one hasn't even seen the movie yet, it's like it's sort of hampers or another way of saying is what's the point of even discussing the movie when you can't even get into major spoilers and
Well,
everything.
and what I've seen in a number of podcasts, including a handful of kaiju podcasts, is that what a lot of these podcasts end up doing is they do the initial episode where they try to be non-spoilery, and then they come
Mm-hmm.
back a little bit later and then do a spoiler one. It's like
Yeah, it's sort of meaningless to do a
it's
non-spoiler review.
redundant
Yeah,
in a lot of, it's like, I mean, if that's what you want to do, fine, but why not just have one and move on to the next thing? But
right.
anyways, basically, I guess I'll just start off by kind of talking about the story of Godzilla Minus One as much of a nutshell as I possibly can. So the movie starts off, near the end of World War II in 1945. Our main character, Koichi, I want to get his last name right here.
Shikishima.
Yeah, Shikishima, and I'm going to call him Koichi for the remainder of the episode. um, he lands his plane on Odo Island, which is sort of I forget the term he uses.
It's a kamikaze pilot repair.
Yeah,
hub.
it's a hub. Yeah, for kamikaze pilots if they have issues with their planes. They find out the main technician, Tachibana, finds out that really there was nothing wrong with his plane. And then that evening, the sirens go off, and then a giant dinosaur type of creature shows up. A pretty interesting reimagining of the Godzillasaurus, I will say. And the Godzillasaurus kills all but Koichi and Tachibana that night. And then Koichi and Tachibana are eventually picked up because by that point the war is done. They're going home. Koichi goes back home, which I forget. Do they even really say where he lives?
It was.
I never got
I would
an
say it
idea
was
where he
somewhere
actually
around.
lives.
I would say it was somewhere around Tokyo when you
It could be around Tokyo.
find out.
So, okay.
Yeah, because
Well, he lives somewhere within Tokyo. People are pretty upset with him because with him being a kamikaze pilot, the fact that he didn't do his job, some people are pretty pissed about that. But then he had this gal, Noriko, meets up with him. She has this orphaned girl that she's taking care of, and so basically they just end up staying with him. And over the next couple of years, they kind of build a life together, even though they aren't married. And you can kind of tell that both of them, on some level, want to be married, but um, Koichi kind of has these issues still with what happened on Odo Island. He's haunted by them. And then we have the Bikini Atoll explosion in 1946, which ultimately mutates our favorite kaiju into the full-fledged Godzilla for this film. And then in 1947, Noriko gets a job in Ginza. Godzilla shows up on the Japanese mainland for the first time, does some heavy damage. His atomic breath, actually, well, I skipped over a thing. Um, Koichi gets a job with a few other characters who will end up being with him the rest of the film. One is Shiro Mizushima, who is also called Kid as a nickname in the film. And then there's Kenji Noda, a former weapon engineer and kind of the scientist of the film. And then where's the guy here? Yoji Akitsu, who is the captain. I'm going to call Kenji Noda, Akitsu captain, and Mizushima Kid for the rest of this podcast to make it easier. um, they are they're involved in helping the Japanese government clear a bunch of landmines off of Japan. There's about 60,000 of them, and they work with another small vessel to do that. So they just go out, cut the chains, and then shoot them and blow them up. Then they meet up with, they are told to go to this large war vessel that has just recently been sunk by a mysterious creature. Koichi knows what sunk it. He's trying to tell him it's Godzilla. The other three, Kid, Captain, and Noda, are kind of like, wait a minute, what's going on here? We thought it was this. We thought the Americans had, killed those guys off of Odo Island. And then eventually Godzilla does show up, destroys their other fishing vessel that was helping them clear mines, and then it chases them for a little bit. They use a couple of landmines to try to kill them. The first one doesn't succeed. The second one is in Godzilla's mouth. Koichi explodes it by shooting at the mine. It sort of takes out part of Godzilla's face on one side, but then he rapidly heals, continues his chases, and about to put a final blow on him until the Toho war vessel coming in from Singapore comes in and engages with Godzilla. Then Godzilla, long story short, ends up destroying that vessel. Then Godzilla shows up in Ginza, does some damage there. His atomic breath destroys the capital, and it's sort of this mushroom cloud effect that his atomic breath is able to do. It seems that Noriko is dead. Koichi is very much distraught. And so he's left with Akiko, the little girl that Noriko brought with her, who was orphaned. And then Noda tells Koichi that there is this citizen plan to try to destroy Godzilla, and that the Japanese government can't get involved with it, and the U.S. can't help because they're afraid that if the U.S. gets involved, the Soviet Union is going to think the U.S. is trying to do some shenanigans to the Soviet Union. So it's up to the citizens to destroy Godzilla. And the plan is to attach Freon tanks to Godzilla to sink him. And he's supposed to sink so fast that the pressure is supposed to crush him. If that doesn't work, plan B is to inflate these large carbon dioxide balloons that are supposed to raise him back up and decompress him. And that, between the compression and decompression, is supposed to hopefully end up killing Godzilla. So Koichi ends up, Noda, I should say, ends up finding a plane because Koichi is hellbent on avenging the mechanics that he feels responsible to have. He feels responsible for their deaths because he didn't fire at the Godzillasaur when he was on that island because he froze up with fear. He wants a plane. He is thinking about kamikaze and throwing a bunch of explosives into Godzilla's mouth because after what happened in their initial encounter with Godzilla at sea, he believes Godzilla is vulnerable from the inside. And so Noda does find a plane for him. It's a prototype. They never were really used. They were initially going to be used had the U.S. landed on Japan during the war, but that never happened because the 2 atomic bombs were dropped. And so the plane needs work. Koichi tries to find Tachibana. Eventually he does. Tachibana's still pissed at him for what happened on Odo Island, but Tachibana does pull through, brings his crew in, works on the new plane. Everything by and large is set up, ready to go for this final plan to lure Godzilla out into what is the Sagami Trench, which is about 1,500 meters deep, designed to hopefully crush and kill Godzilla. But Godzilla shows up a little bit sooner than everyone expects, and so a little bit of the surrounding Tokyo area is destroyed, but then Koichi takes off and eventually lures Godzilla out into sea. They initiate the plan to wrap Godzilla around in this cable with the Freon cylinders. That takes place. They shoot Godzilla down, and they are wondering if they got him. No, they didn't, so they shoot him back up. But then he stops at about the 800 meter level, and they're like, what's happening? Well, then everything shoots back up again. Well, he chews through the cable that had the Freon cylinders and the CO2 balloons attached. And then they eventually, with the help of Kid, who was told not to go on this trip, and a bunch of other peoples, as Kid calls them, the useless, they come with their tiny tugboats, help the two war vessels drag Godzilla up. Godzilla has a bunch of Freon and stuff on him, is ready to shoot off his final breath, which is looking to destroy at least one of the vessels. But then Koichi comes in and throws his plane to Godzilla's mouth. Everyone thinks, and then the plane blows up in Godzilla's mouth. Everyone thinks that Koichi did commit kamikaze, but then Noda notices Koichi parachute down, and then we take a picture over to Godzilla. His body falls apart. He's sinking into the trench. And they all go home. And the neighbor Koichi gave Akiko to got a telegram saying that Noriko was actually still alive at a hospital. So then the movie concludes with Koichi finding Noriko, crying with sadness at the sight of Noriko, and then it ultimately closes with a shot of a large chunk of Godzilla's corpse regenerating, and that's it. That wasn't much of a nutshell, but I wanted to give enough of a picture to sort of
pretty much 3 paragraphs worth.
Yeah. I mean, and now I don't know exactly where to go from here. You know what? I did a lot of talking there. Why don't you just kind of lead us off in terms of the actual discussion?
I would say, why don't we start with the story and a plot for Godzilla Minus One. With the story and plot, you can say it's sort of straightforward in a way, but I would say it's kind of has some of the complexities here and there in certain areas throughout the film, but it's just kind of, I would say, with some of the action films where they tend to be sort of nonstop throughout the entire film as far as having a lot of action going on. I would say with Godzilla Minus One, it sort of goes with that trend, with maybe some spots here and there were kind of sort of takes a little bit of a break, but then picks right back up and goes, nonstop drama and action, that sort of thing. And I think it really fits with what Yamazaki was trying to do with the film, and instead of just kind of doing like the whole Jaws or Alien type of footprint, where some of the other directors of the past have been kind of imitating that portion, where Yamazaki's kind of doing his thing with the story, just kind of sort of tying some of the lores of Godzilla's past and try to tie them more together here, where he's sort of took a little bit of Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, the 91 film, with Godzilla's source, and maybe make them a little bit different here, but then also taking bits of the original Gojira with Odo Island and everything, just kind of fit everything from uh, the Godzilla universe or lore out of the entire 70 years or 69 years and try to sort of fit all those things together in this film, which I think it's. I know we talked about the pandering and all that, but I would say with what Yamazaki was doing, I think this one is a good pandering in a way, kind of sort of a nod, but not sort of putting it in your face all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I let the quote unquote pandering go. The only real serious pandering I would say that took place in this film was the use of the Ifukube Godzilla theme and then the use of the classic roar. But this movie is so different from, in many respects, of what we've seen before. I I went into this movie saying it's a retelling of the 54 movie, and after the two times I've seen it, I still call it a retelling of the 54 film. Whereas that film took place in what was then modern Japan in 54, this one obviously goes back in time because it's not the 1940s, but it even takes it sooner after World War II, just like 2 years, not even like a year and a half after World War II. And I would like to know more specifically as to why Yamazaki did that, because I have a couple theories as to maybe why he did that. One theory I have is that maybe he just wanted to go back, to Godzilla's roots. And we've heard, Toho saying they want to do their own MCU style. And I don't know if this is part of the reason why, where they're trying to set up roots and origins for Godzilla, perhaps. I don't know if that's part of it.
Well,
but at the same time, my second theory is that maybe because obviously Japan being the only country to have a nuclear bomb dropped on it, that the country in still many ways, that maybe there's a segment of the population that is still so haunted by that even though, yes, that generation that experienced it is slowly dying off, the fact, though, that the country itself and the way that it is right now is because of the catastrophe that happened to it in 1945, and maybe the current population, or at least some sects of it, are really sort of wanting to rethink a little bit as far as their own history. And sort of the reason why we are Japan now is because of something that happened math now nearly 80 years ago. So there's a couple theories there. What he was thinking, I'm not sure. I have not seen any interviews or any sort of transcripts of an interview or anything like that.
Yeah, I know I asked August Ragone as far as if this could be the start of like Toho's supposed sort of world of Godzilla. What the heck was all the confetti?
You threw confetti out there.
I didn't. It's just AI generators, some shit. But yeah, I asked him about that, and he said that it was a part of it. But after watching the very end with the corpse, where you see the corpse of Godzilla, fastly regenerated before it showed the title card and credits, that it just led me to believe, even before watching this film, it's like, I just have a feeling that this could be, 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 this.
Are you there? Hello, I think we're having some technical difficulty here. I missed out on a little bit of what Jason said there. So, what I'm hopefully this feed stays up long enough for him to get back in here. Um, so, what I will say this, as far as my opinions on the story, I love it an awful lot. I think that a return to Godzilla's original roots, the product of nuclear bombs and the attacking of Japan. Um, oh, I'm sorry, Keegan. I didn't see your messages there. um, oh, you can hear me, Jason? I can't see you, though. Like, um, there was this weird repetition of something that you had said, and then I couldn't hear anything else you were saying, but I kept saying, this could be on loop. And now, yeah, your stuff is froze. Yeah, because it shows this Elgato camera logo here. Yeah, I don't know. Um, I'm sorry, folks. He got some new equipment. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm so sick of these technical difficulties because now it really killed. um, it really killed the whole pacing here. It looks like I'm by myself, and I don't know how long this will stay up because I'm not the one who's in charge of doing this. But I really enjoy this story and the retelling of it. This movie, Jason took himself off to figure things out. Well, yeah, hopefully this stays. I'm trying to communicate. I'm trying to do a couple things at once here. I'm sorry, folks. See, I'm even losing my train of thought. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, folks. Here's what I will say about the story, kind of as a whole. I I think in many respects this does things a little bit better than 54. And I understand that trying to compare this to a movie that is nearly 70 years old, for some people it's unfair because, again, you have the span of many years to where how you tell a story and what you're able to show is so different now than it was back then. And I know, at least in Hollywood, there was a period of time where there was like movie codes. And there were certain things you couldn't say, certain things you couldn't show, etc., for a while. And I'm not sure if that was true in Japan as well. So don't quote me on that. If anyone out there knows, then please say so in the comments below, because I'm not sure if Japan had something similar to what Hollywood had at the same time. But at the same time, too, wow, that was redundant. I do think you have to compare and contrast, because in many respects, this is a redoing of that 54 film, just like Peter Jackson's King Kong was a retelling of that 33 film. And oh, there he is. I see your lips moving, but I can't hear you. Yeah, I still can't hear you. So I think it's still appropriate to compare and contrast the two films. Nope, still can't hear you. All right, well, he went off again. So thankfully, this. I'm so sorry, folks. What a disaster this is. I'm so upset at the technical difficulties anymore. Like a majority of the time, it's the software, and we've gone through and tried out so many different pieces of software over the years, and it always seems like eventually said software ends up displaying some fatal flaw within itself that ends up making us move to something else after a period of time. So um, I'm I'm similar in how I felt about Peter Jackson's King Kong, in that I think that movie tells the Kong story more effectively than the 33 film. And I think this one tells the 54 style of Godzilla story. Even though I understand this isn't an exact retelling of that, I think it tells that part of the story better. Whether or not that's fair, I leave up to you. If you have differing views, that's fine. You can leave let your opinion be known, again, in comments below. But one of the things about this story that I really love.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Finally.
You're on a little bit of a video delay, but at least I can hear you.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell happened, because I looked at the my little mixer thing, that the little audio bars were just completely stuck and froze and everything, and I don't know what the hell happened to everything.
Like
I'm on a Mac computer, not my PC that kept on shit in the bed the other day.
Well, like I've been saying, I'm so sick of the technical difficulty. It seems like every podcast we do now, there's something going on.
Yeah.
But getting back to like the story, have you been hearing what I've been saying?
Oh yeah, the entire time.
Okay, well then that good, because I don't want to have to repeat anything.
Although I probably sort of forgot a couple things while I was.
I have, because
stuff, so.
with everything, like I did forget sort of my train of thought. But I do have some criticisms, maybe even some nitpicks about the story. I'm not sure if I want to get to those just yet necessarily, but I love the fact that this movie, I think, does a better job of capturing the horrors of post-war Japan than 54. Now, again, granted, I understand that this is almost immediately after World War II, whereas 54 was 9 years after World War II. So it's different. But the point of the two movies is exactly the same. It's about the horrors of war. And one could, I think, successfully argue, too, that in 54, Godzilla was an allegory for the bombs. Here, Godzilla is just a continuation of the bombs, because even though, yes, he's created... What's that?
In the wars as well.
Yeah, and he's still maybe an allegory for that, but I would argue he's just a continuation of what they went through in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
And the other thing, I would say pretty much the entire theme of the film, and I think it's sort of kept it going sort of throughout the entire film. They kind of sprinkled it out, is that not only that sometimes you have things that you need to finish, but also to live, for the future and everything. That was sort of the theme throughout. No matter, like, you're sort of like you survive for a certain purpose, or to live for others, your friends and family, to survive and to have a better life and future.
And what I'm about to say, definitely I can put in a nutshell. I would say the themes of this movie are war is hell, and that its effects, especially of a major war like a World War II, its effects are felt ongoing. Because in many ways, there's still large chunks of who we are as the United States, even the Soviet Union, Germany, other European countries, even Japan. They are what they are today because of what happened
Mm-hmm.
during that war. And Godzilla, in my opinion, in this film is an extension of that. And I think it's done intentionally to have his atomic breath, have this force to where it's like an atomic blast, because every time he blasts it on something, it's a mushroom cloud effect.
Yeah. So the one thing I want to talk about is his atomic ray. And I would have to say, throughout the entire Godzilla franchise, including all the films here made in America and uh, obviously Toho, out of all those films, I would have to say that his atomic ray in this movie is probably I would say, light years ahead, the most effective and most destructive atomic ray that we've ever witnessed out of the entire franchise.
Yeah, and that's done, like I said, I think intentionally too. It's almost like, especially when he uses it on mainland Japan, which I think actually is only the one time when he attacks the Ginza district. It's almost as if Japan is getting hit with another atomic bomb, and I think that's kind of what that's supposed to imply, that Godzilla is this walking atomic bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my gosh, like that whole technical thing like really threw my train of thought off, because I had this whole idea.
It sort of threw me off too. So
Yeah, because I had an idea of how I was gonna transition through all of this. But I love the human story here. This, I think, is the most touching human story I've ever seen in a Godzilla film.
it's a pretty tear jerker. I think you
It
can probably
is.
agree with me on that one.
It is. The parts that got me the most were when Akiko the two times cried, because as a parent, I kind of know what that's about. Like, you have this kid who doesn't understand what's going on with, like my wife will go on conferences, and when my kids were real young, they would cry because mom is gone. They don't see mom. And then like my daughter still, I am told that when they go and visit extended family in Wisconsin, that my daughter still cries sometimes when they go off, and I stay here at home to relax and play with the cats and all that. And those moments when Akiko cried, like, really got me. And it's just like, as a parent, that just like that hit me. And do I think it's the best told human story in the Godzilla franchise? I think it's darn close. I still think the anime trilogy does an overall better job of telling more complete character stories and character arcs. And I'm not saying there are no character arcs here. There are. I just think really getting to know the characters, who they are, really get to know who they are, it's darn close to being near perfect here.
Mm-hmm.
Here's one of the criticisms I have of this film. Koichi, I think, by and large, we get a very good idea of who he is. Noriko, there's still some things about her I'm a little unclear of. I know shortly after they meet, she kind of tells a little bit of her backstory, that she's not married. Her family got burned in the air raids. This dying mother gave her Akiko, and here she is. Otherwise, there isn't a whole lot to her character.
Yeah, it would have been better because it felt like she was sort of dropped in there a little bit and sort of kind of forced in a way. But I would say at the same time she kind of naturally fit in a little bit, but it would have been a little bit better if maybe she was like a close friend to Shikishima here. I think that would have
Maybe,
been a
yeah.
little bit better.
You could tell both their stories almost simultaneously in that regard. I
Yeah.
almost think now that I'm sitting here and we're discussing it, I almost wonder if her purpose, other than to serve as a quote unquote love interest in this film, I almost think her purpose more than anything else was to help draw out Koichi's like PTSD of what happened on Odo Island and to ultimately push him at the end of the movie to get more involved with the attack on Godzilla. Because it may be possible that if she hadn't come into his life and then everything else happened, it's debatable, I think, as to whether or not maybe he would have gotten involved at the end. There still is the possibility because he would still carry that guilt of what happened on Odo. But would he be as motivated? I feel like Noriko was that other individual that really just kind of added the extra oomph, push him to get more involved in that final confrontation. So again, it's debatable. I still would have loved to have learned a little bit more about Noda, Kid, and Captain. All we know is that Noda developed weapons for the Navy. Kid was so young that he just didn't serve in the war, but yet he wants to defend his country. And Captain, he served, but I guess he was in the Navy too. We're never. I never thought, even after 2 viewings, that there was really a clear understanding as to how, like, his exact involvement. I got the impression he was involved with the Navy, but I'm
Yeah.
not totally sure on that. And so, what capacity?
I don't know. I was looking at Tachibana here. As far as captain's name, it was it
Akitsu.
Kenji Akitsu? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just calling him Captain to make it easy.
Yeah, it just says Shinsei Maru's captain, which is that.
Well, yeah, for the movie. But I'm wondering about like just his story, like right up to the point we meet him in the film.
Yeah, but the one thing I want to touch upon was that Yuki Yamada, who's the kid, nicknamed Kid. I really recognize his face right off the bat because it's like I could have sworn I've seen him in other Japanese live action dramas before in the past, and I was correct because there were times in the past during the early days of Crunchyroll where they had live action TV dramas of some notable anime or manga adaptations, such as GTO, and then this Mischievous Kiss, Love in Tokyo live action adaptations where he played either as a lead role or a supporting role for some of those TV shows. And he also appeared in some Sentai shows, and as well as I think at least one Kamen Rider TV show, which was Kamen Rider X Super Sentai. So he's been involved in a lot of the Sentai and Tokusatsu and some of the other manga / anime TV adaptation drama shows. So that's where I recognize that face anywhere.
Yeah, to me it looked familiar, but nothing you said there made me like, no, like like I haven't seen him in any of that stuff just because I haven't watched that stuff.
Yeah, maybe one of these times that when we're off, and you can maybe take a look at his bio as far as the list of projects that he's been in. You maybe recognize some of the names of the shows or movies.
Yeah, and while we're sort of on the topic of criticisms that I have for the story, anyways. Um, yes, I guess that's fine. Thank you. Make sure you feed the cats in 20. We will. Sorry. Again, having young kids. So another criticism I have. Oh fuck! What was the criticism?
I know the one. I know the one thing that you mentioned about was the Godzilla suites or scores. They were actually
I want to wait
recreated
though
from.
to get to scores or the
Oh,
music.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about just the story.
Okay.
I thought the movie in a couple of spots was pretty predictable. Granted, it's like, I guess if you see enough movies, there are fewer and fewer films that are going to surprise you. But I sort of knew, like, even before Tachibana had this moment where Koichi's in the cockpit of the aircraft and tells him there's one more thing. I sort of knew Koichi was not going to commit kamikaze. And when Tachibana said there's one more thing, and I'm like, oh, he's going to show him the ejection lever.
Yeah. And when he was showing the things in that test airplane that was never used in the war, and they were kind of showing, what's the specific name for different shots? Kind of showing montage.
Interior?
Like they were showing certain montages of when they were kind of preparing the plane, and then kind of towards the end where Shikishima was in the cockpit and Tachibana was kind of showing certain things. And when towards the end of the montage, they were zooming out, or they were zoomed out, showing the entire plane with those two at the top, kind of near the cockpit, kind of away, and didn't hear any dialogue or anything. You kind of see Tachibana kind of pointing something towards the back left side there, and he was, again, with the dumb AI stuff, where he was kind of looking at that specific area earlier when he was seeing the plane for the very first time. And later on, you get to see the reason behind Shikishima just staying alive. It was like, yeah, we that was the same exact shot of what he was talking about. So that was sort of the predictable thing.
Yeah.
When you notice that.
And my other criticism, and this to me, they go kind of hand in hand with one scene and then with the film as a whole. And that is, this film, I think, pulls its punches just a little bit at points. The reason why I say that is that initially I did think they killed Noriko, because I thought that was kind of what this film was going to do. It was going to show you hell. It was going to show you the horrors of war, but then the extension of that with Godzilla and the chaos he created. And for a bit, I thought they were going to kill, that they did kill Noriko.
That's what I initially thought too.
And I thought, okay, like this is kind of in keeping with the theme of the film and with its tone. This is a darker Godzilla movie that Toho has made. But then towards almost the end part of the film, before the final confrontation of Godzilla, when Sumiko, the neighbor gal who ends up taking care of Akiko much of the time during the day, she gets this telegram, and I knew immediately when that moment came up, I immediately thought to myself, Noriko is actually alive.
Yeah, that was the same exact reaction that I got too.
I have mixed feelings about that. One thing is that I am sort of a sucker for happy endings. I get that, and there's a part of me that's happy to see her alive. But number two, I've also become more cynical as I've gotten older, and there's a part of me that's like, no, you can't do that. Like, this is what you did earlier. You can't just pull this sort of thing with what she went through. She, I mean, there could be other survivors of that blast, but I don't know. I'm assuming everyone else died. But if everyone else died, how come she survived? And number three, more importantly, the biggest criticism I have for her being alive is that it takes away a little bit of the emotional power that this movie had throughout most of it, which was the whole war is hell and no one's safe from war and its after effects, all that. And I really thought it powered Koichi's character through from the, because that scene when Godzilla blows up the tanks and the Capitol, and people are blown away and crap, and then he's out there in the street screaming and that goopy dirty rain is coming down on him. That to me was also another well done, very powerful, very emotionally triggering scene that just adds fuel to his fire to get revenge and to be determined to somehow stop Godzilla. And yes, he finds out about her after he's taken care of Godzilla, but it still kills kind of the power and just the rawness that this movie really wanted to put forward. So I'm conflicted on it. The sappy part of me likes it, but at the same time, it's kind of cliched. The cynical part of me is like, yeah, but you can't do that because of probably everyone else there died, but how did she survive? And no, that's BS. But again, it really, I think, hurts emotionally what this film wanted to bring. And that's what this movie did, I think, so much better than any other Godzilla movie, which is to bring you more of the raw human emotion and to show it in the dark way. It's not so dark that it puts you in a dark headspace, but it's dark in that you feel for the characters. Mm-hmm. You cry for them. You cry with them. And to do something like that, it's a cheat. I think it's sort of a kick in the nuts to the audience a little bit, because it's a cheat. And part of me, though, too, I think has been contaminated by, I took a fiction writing course in community college. I had a professor who probably not even alive anymore, but I thought he was kind of a jerk anyway. I didn't like some of his criticisms because I thought he was kind of an ass who didn't know some of the things he was talking about. And then some of my peers were sort of those snotty writer types that were like, well, with the character in this situation, they would not be doing this. And I'm just, shove it up your ass. But, was kind of my whole thing on that. Those kind of people. And then I've listened to a number of general movie review podcasts, and I've been listening to some of those for years, over a decade, of people who went to film school. And they talk about writing and character work and all that fun stuff too. And I think some of the crap from my writing class and then listening to some of these podcasts has rubbed off to me, and now it's hard for me, I guess, to be willfully ignorant of critiquing a film. Whereas part of me is like, I wish I could just sit here numb-minded and just go, I like. But then part of me is like, wait a minute. Like my brain is churning. Like, what in the world? Because 13-year-old me would be like, that was great. Yeah. I like this and that. Now I'm like, okay, I kind of like it, but this is a cheat. And this is not cool. And
well, it's a movie. What can you do?
I know. I mean, I'm not going to hold the thing I'm going to hold against the story is I wish some of the other characters in the film were done a little bit better in terms of having slightly deeper stories. Um, I wished that if they were that Noriko stayed dead, and crap, I'm forgetting stuff again.
I'm sure that they maybe originally that they were probably going to keep her dead in this, but then they probably had test screenings afterwards, and maybe as far as the score, whether if it was high or low, probably low, maybe in certain areas, they were probably thinking like maybe some of the higher ups that were reviewing this film and stuff during the post-production phase, that they were probably saying it's a little bit too dark, maybe try to add in a couple of things
It's
here
possible, yeah.
here and there to try to make it not as dark and maybe improve on this thing here, so on and so forth. That could be one of the reasons why that they sort of made Noriko inevitably be alive right at the end of the film.
Yeah. And the next thing I have, and this is a nitpick, I'm not really going to criticize, I'm not going to hold this against the film, but my nitpick is that I actually would have liked to have had a little bit more Godzilla in this film. We get the Godzilla sword thing, we get the boat scene, which was good, but I thought was a little short. The Ginza scene, surprising. I mean, it was fantastic, don't get me wrong, but I thought even that was a little bit short. And then we don't get any Godzilla again until the very end, and then he's on land, but he doesn't destroy a whole lot. I really thought there was one more like big city destruction thing before the final confrontation.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen.
Yeah, the only destruction that he only does is, throw that one boat onto land, which destroys the building, and then when he gets on land, he maybe destroys a couple of barn houses here and there. That was essentially it.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed by that because, like I said, I thought the Ginza thing was like a warm-up destruction scene, and that later we were going to have sort of a repeat of like what 54 had, where you get the big sequence of him going through Tokyo and causing massive damage.
Or maybe some other city besides Tokyo.
Yeah, and that didn't happen, and that disappointed me. But I almost wonder, because this was a $15 million budget, if budget may have had something to do with that. It's possible. I'm not sure. Like I said, to me, it's a nitpick. I'm not really going to hold it against the movie in my final thought, but it just was something I was a little disappointed in.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted a little bit more Godzilla and a longer extended destruction sequence.
Yeah, I was a little bit that way, but with the human characters, focusing on Godzilla and everything, it's just like some of those other movies of the past say, when they're talking about a certain thing, it's still sort of stuck in your mind throughout the entire viewing of the film there. And that certainly fits it pretty well in here, too, where you're still thinking of Godzilla when they, discuss, some of the traumas and also trying to figure out ways and how to kill Godzilla, where they're at this countermeasure HQ trying to conspiring a plan to defeat Godzilla with those tanks and as well as the floats and everything. And then you have Shikishima just sort of going behind the scenes, kind of devising his own plan in case if both those plans initially failed, where he has a bomb baked into that plane and he would sunset pretty much at that point.
And one thing I really want to say that I think is is an important point that I want to make on this film is that I think I think in a similar fashion to the anime trilogy, but for I think really the first time in live action Godzilla films, this isn't a Godzilla film per se. It's not about the monster. Um, I'm sorry, folks. Yes. Yes. um, this film is not really about Godzilla per se. It's not like a Godzilla versus Gigan where it's ultimately like, will Godzilla stop Gigan to save the planet? This is a human story about tragedy, massive loss. It's a story about dealing with the after effects of war.
And the other thing is survival.
Well, yeah, surviving and Godzilla is just an extension of World War II here. He is a walking atomic bomb that occasionally, not just through his physical destruction of stomping through places and causing havoc, but more specifically with his atomic ray, causing like multiple added atomic bombs dropping on Japan. And that's something that maybe I would, if it wasn't done so well here, if Yamazaki's storytelling and the other writers who were involved with this did not do such an incredible job of incorporating Godzilla flawlessly in this story, this could have easily turned out to be something like Shin Godzilla, where Godzilla is nothing but a tool. And I understand Shin Godzilla was trying to do something, it was trying to commentate on something different. But the thing is that the story they were wanting to tell put Godzilla in a position that it didn't matter. They could have had the best storytellers, and I don't think anyone would have been able to successfully incorporate Godzilla as irreplaceable. Right. You could replace Godzilla in that movie with just about anything else, and you could tell the same story. Here, because it is basically going exactly right back to Godzilla's origins as to his own story originally, how he was created and all that. That's what he is. That's what he was in 54. Godzilla was, again, the allegory thing.
Yeah.
I'm convincing myself that yes, he is an allegory now. He is.
he's always been an allegory for this entire time.
Yeah, he's a walking atomic bomb who was a product of atomic bombs. Shin Godzilla is just a Godzilla. You could replace that Godzilla with either a different kaiju. You could replace it with a natural disaster of some sort. Like,
maybe Ultraman.
Yeah, a walking Dr. Pepper can. I mean, the official sponsor, Godzilla 1985. So, like, it is the human condition, I think, is on full display here post-war. Not just World War II, but any war.
Yeah.
War, again, is hell.
Yeah.
And that's what this movie captures. So, and one of the lines done by Captain to Kid the night before they're getting ready to execute that final plan, he tells Kid, who's like, take me with you. I want to defend my country too. Captain says, there's something to be proud of not having gone to war.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm like, thank you, because a lot of movies in the West, here in the United States, and that's changed a little bit, maybe in the last 15, 20 years, but definitely like in the 80s and going back further, in a lot of US cinema, it was always like, yeah, you go to war. That's, that's how you become a man. That's where you're forged. That's how you become the master of disaster, that sort of thing. And I just, as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh my God, like there's nothing spectacular about it. You're getting PTSD, you're seeing your friends die, etc. And now it's changing. And I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, and the one thing about where you can definitely tell um, the viewpoints of a lot of the characters that are in this movie, from the very beginning when the film started, that they still had that mindset of the war and everything, and have honor as far as, you're a kamikaze pilot and you kind of know what's going to happen, on your mission and everything. And where the main character is like, he decided not to do it and he wanted to live, because he promised, I think, his family that he was going to come back home. Well, he did, but then he finds out his family is no longer alive, and the neighbor of his, Sumiko, where she was kind of disappointed in him. You're what's the point of serving your country and all that stuff. But then eventually, as the story progresses, that a lot of them have changed their viewpoint of honor, but then with pride and surviving and being there for
What it
your
means to
family
be
and
a hero or a warrior.
that, and being there for your family and friends, and to survive or to live another day or for the future.
Yeah, I mean it's sprinkled all throughout the movie. Like Noriko gives a brief speech when he tells her that he's going to be a minesweeper. Um, Captain a couple times gets after Koichi about doing a kamikaze mission against Godzilla. Noda, when he's talking to the group of soldiers, when one of the Geiger counters on the buoys goes off, um, basically you can tell he's kind of like, screw it, no, I'm gonna say no one's gonna die on this. And he gives this interesting speech of like, this country has never cared or valued life because there's been poor armor on the tanks, no ejection seats in the planes, poor supply chains where people are dying of disease and starvation. Like, and then Tachibana himself, who, earlier in the film is pissed at Koichi for not only not firing his guns at the Godzillasaur, but for also not doing his duty as a kamikaze pilot. Tachibana himself, even in the process of putting that plane together, has a change of heart. And we even see him at the end where it's been confirmed that Koichi did eject his seat. Koichi has a scene where he's, listening to a radio cast of what's going on, and he's happy that Koichi ejected and survived. And that's, yeah, again, you're onto something there too, where it's not just about talking about loss and how to navigate that, and that war is hell, but that there's value in life as well. And that even though Godzilla is a life that they killed, and we know why, because he was, destroying their homes, which is sort of ironic when you think about it. But at the same time, they give him that salute too. So it's like a respect that they have for the creature, that they kind of had to kill him in order for them to live. But at the same time, Godzilla, going back to the allegory thing, is an extension of the war and was continuing to cause hell to a country that right at the tail end was just devastated after those blasts and the air raids. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of layers to this. We've spent a lot of time on, we blended in some character stuff in there as well, but
since we've kind of pretty much took care of the story, and I probably would say the characters as well. Why don't we talk about the visual effects um, for this film? I would say um, light years ahead. I'd say it's far better compared to Shin Godzilla, where Toho, that was the first film Toho actually did a Godzilla just using computer or CGI for that matter, instead of the traditional suitimation. And with minus one being the second film of doing a CGI Godzilla here, you can definitely tell out of 6 to 7 years of how improved they've come so far when it comes to using full on CGI, for building destruction, Godzilla, and some of the other things. It's far improved in the last 6 to 7 years.
Yes.
Although I probably would say my only nitpick is during the kind of that nightmare scene with Shikishima, and he kind of goes out and then sees the Godzilla source. It felt like in that certain shot in that nightmare scene where it felt like they could have polished that Godzilla source a little bit more, but other than that, it's far, far better improved as far as CGI goes.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the effects work has improved since Shin Godzilla. I would say the best where the effects work comes in and shines is in like water splashing scenes, the destruction scenes, some of the landscapes, etc. Godzilla himself looks good, really good.
Mm-hmm.
They still, though, haven't quite totally mastered movement. Some of the movement was good, but when you got Godzilla doing full body movement in certain poses, some of it still felt a little off. Some of it still felt maybe a bit faster than it should. Some of it looked like maybe he was physically contorted in a way that he shouldn't exactly have been, but
Yeah, I kind of know what you're talking about as far as when he's powering up and then unleashing the atomic ray. That's probably my other little nitpick is when he blasts the atomic ray, just that sheer movement there, it felt a little
it's
bit
too
unnatural
fast.
to me.
See,
Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah,
just some
because
of
I
his
know.
moves I thought was way too fast for a creature that size.
Yeah, because I know I've seen some people made some comments on that when they were showing some previews of that exact shot before the movie came out, where some people made some comments of that part where he unleashes the atomic ray felt a little bit unnatural as far as the movement goes.
Yeah, and there were just in general some other things that were a tad herky jerky, but yeah, like you, to me, it's a nitpick. It's nothing that I'm going to condemn the movie for. But
Right.
yeah, again, it's an improvement. There's still a little bit of work that needs to be done, but again, it could be budget issues again. If maybe this thing had an extra 20 million, let's say, maybe some of that, if not all of it, could have been fixed. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, um, yeah, I still think it needs to be brought to the forefront. Yeah, but
No, no doubt. Yeah.
otherwise though, I really dig the effects. I want to say too, kind of going with the effects work here, I love the design of this Godzilla. It
Mm-hmm.
has quickly become one of my favorites. I'm not quite sure if it is my favorite, but it is up there. And
Yeah.
one of the things I loved the most, and this is a tiny detail, one of the things I loved an awful lot about what they did here with this Godzilla was that they kept the piece of his cheek the same healing color after that side of his face got blown off earlier in the film. They
Mm-hmm.
always kept it. It's always there. And little details like that tend to get lost usually. And a lot of times, yeah, you'll notice it. For me, it's like, it's fine unless it's a major thing. Like if an arm is cut off and then the next scene he has it, that to me is a major problem. But
Yeah.
if like there's a scratch and then the next scene it's gone, I'm like, yeah, it should be there, but I'm not gonna worry about it. They kept like the healing part of that cheek, the fact that
Hmm.
it's a slightly different color, there the whole time after that initial blowing up
Yeah.
incident.
Yeah, maybe still healing a little bit, but I also kind of liked how they, do that G cell fast regeneration. Like it really regenerates
Yeah.
quite as fast compared to those in the past and everything. But it's like
I
you
would
can
argue it's a
definitely
tad slower, but we actually see it happening this
like
time.
in action this time. Yeah, like when they detonate that mine in his mouth and everything, where it's like part of his face is taken out from that explosions. Like you can see all the details of that regeneration from his cheekbones to his eyes and like teeth and everything.
And what I like too about this particular version of Godzilla is that to a certain degree, he can be hurt by conventional weapons because we see in some scenes like parts of him kind of get blown into a bit. But yeah,
Mhm.
it takes a moment to heal. I think he was still, when he was attacking them on that minesweeper vessel, that he was still um, becoming the full-fledged Godzilla, because it seemed like when he attacked Ginza, when those tanks were coming at him, it seemed like he handled their fire a little bit better, which leads me to
Mhm.
believe maybe he still was in the process of mutating still, perhaps. I'm not sure. Either that or it could be a whoopsie. I'm not sure. But um,
Yeah.
nevertheless, it seemed like this Godzilla, to some degree, can be hurt by conventional weaponry, but you see the healing. And I kind
Yeah.
of like that.
And the other thing is his howl in a way, although it's sort of well, it kind of harkens back to the original 1954 because you can hear the familiar howl in there, but uh, just how that was remastered, much more cleaned up, and also they added on more to that familiar Godzilla howl
Mhm.
there to where it's sort of like almost an original and part of the movie where we've, you know, heck, we talked about this the other day during Shin Ultraman, where we were kind of talking as far as completely like both that movie and Shin Godzilla, where they just took the original tracks from like an archive from Toho and just stuck it in there, not either remastering or recreating
Even the
that specific
soundtrack was like
howl
the
and
same.
yeah, specific howl or sound effects. They with this film they not only remastered the familiar Godzilla howl, but they also recreated and added on to that howl here, and that's the thing that I like is at least good pandering in a way, sort of kind of bringing some of those familiar things, but then at least remastering it or adding on more to it.
Yeah, and like the Shin Godzilla soundtrack, with the exception of like only a couple tracks, the entire soundtrack is nothing but a rehash of previous films. Some of the oh, what was Anno's popular anime?
Oh, Evangelion.
Yeah, Evangelion. There was some repeat of Evangelion music. There was repeat of different Godzilla and Toho films. There was even music from like Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. There was music from, I think, Battle in Outer Space.
Mhm.
Some of the music wasn't even actually played in the film. And it made me despise that film even more, because I'm like, okay, it's bad enough you're just recycling sound effects.
Mhm.
You're recycling soundtracks. This is
Yeah.
bad and lazy filmmaking.
Yeah. And why don't we just kind of easily transition into the soundtrack
Yeah, I wanted to do that. Yeah.
for this? And I actually listened to it Godzilla Minus One soundtrack on Spotify yesterday, and just from the overall, my overall opinion about it is that it felt more Hollywood-esque this time around, where it kind of had that.
Though?
I would say it's a good thing. It made it like the scores were a bit more deeper, but it had that Hollywood-esque type of feel to it. It felt a little bit more epic in a way, but also it had that ambiance type of vibe to the soundtracks as well. But then also it was sort of nice. This is my critique on it, is that they had not only one Godzilla suite or theme to it, but they had 3 of them. Although there are different versions of the Godzilla score. However, the way that they sort of put them in the movie, it just sort of felt out of place, especially when they inserted one into the Ginza attack there, and then maybe towards the end. I would say, in my opinion, it was sort of overkill the way that they added the score to there. For me, in my opinion, probably the best way to have had it is when at the very end, when you saw the Godzilla corpse. That's probably the best way to use the Godzilla score instead of just in random areas the way it felt like.
I was waiting until we talked about the music, and this is my final like criticism of the film, was how they did the music for Ginza. Let me just say this. Okay, I've seen this movie twice. I saw it Friday and I saw it last night.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad I saw it twice, because I sort of have a slightly different take on a few things with the music. One of my bigger criticisms that I will hold against the movie a little bit was the choice of using the typical Ifukube Godzilla theme during the Ginza attack. I know why they did it, because that's the more popular, well-known Godzilla theme.
Right.
And they probably thought, too, fans would like this, so it's a pandering moment. I hate to say that, because I really do like this film. Here's the thing. I thought the choice of using the Godzilla theme for the Ginza attack was, I don't want to say inappropriate.
I would say it's out of place.
It definitely was out of place, and it was the wrong choice. Because here's the thing. Ifukube's Godzilla theme, and I don't know about everyone else, but I'm going to go out on a ledge and say that what I'm about to say, most people are going to feel about it the same way that I do. When you hear that Ifukube Godzilla theme, you probably feel awe, majesty, and power with that. That's all well and good, except for a movie like this that is trying to be very serious about the story and themes it's trying to tell. I don't think it captures the horror/terror of what Godzilla is doing and what the people are going through. Mm-hmm. It puts, I think, very unfortunately, a slightly lighter tone on all the chaos that we're seeing.
Yeah, because when I was listening to the soundtrack yesterday, with sort of the ambiance and the suspense type of feel that all the other tracks had, although the Godzilla scores in here were also recreated by I forget the name of the person
Naoki Sato is this.
Yeah, Naoki Sato, who composed the film. He also recreated the 3 Godzilla suites in here as well, and it sounds almost to the T Akira Ifukube's actual Godzilla scores and everything. But yeah, it just those three Godzilla scores just felt sort of out of place compared to the rest of the scores that were ambiance and suspense and Hollywood-esque type of feel to it.
Yeah, I just thought it was a wrong decision to make. And after seeing the movie twice, I still think it was the worst musical decision that they made in this film. I initially, after I saw the movie on Friday night, the first time, I also thought it was out of place during the final confrontation. After seeing it a second time, I thought it worked a little bit better. I thought maybe it was a tad more appropriate because I started thinking, okay, like it's actually more about feeling the energy and the power of the soldiers trying to defeat Godzilla. Like I'm like, okay, I kind of like this a little bit more than I did last night. I still maybe would have changed that a little bit, but I thought it fit a little bit better in the final confrontation. I don't think it worked well in the Ginza scene.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like you said, it definitely works, obviously, with Godzilla regenerating at the end. Oh, and that's another criticism I have. I'm not going to hold it against the film, though. The whole Godzilla regenerating thing, I think, should have been left out. Because they have done it before where they didn't show like Godzilla alive. Obviously, they didn't do it in 54, but at the time they didn't know a sequel was going to be made. But they also, off the top of my head, I know they didn't do it at the end of The Return of Godzilla. There was nothing to show that he was alive in some way, shape, or form after falling into that volcano. But I understand Toho has this obsession with saying that Godzilla can never die. Like that was one of the things that I remember, in all these stories when it comes to this TriStar Godzilla, it's like, okay, well, there are like 4 things about Godzilla that you need to incorporate. And one of them was that he can't die. And it's like, that's fine, but you've done it before in a couple of other movies. Why can't you just leave it alone? Like,
I would just say for the reason of sort of the trend of nowadays where they sort of leave things out in the open in case if there's going to be a sequel. And like what we were discussing earlier, if this could potentially be the first step towards the world of Godzilla cinematic universe. And I mentioned about as far as August Ragon's answer on that. And I've sort of had the feeling that this could be a possible stepping stone towards that, and that ending sort of confirms it. Perhaps not. We may never know until maybe a couple or so years down the road if they're going to possibly do more and tie in those potential future movies with -1 here. So
the more I think about it, the more I think they won't, simply because this in many ways was a retelling of 54, and this one I think they're going to leave as standalone. And I think they should have not even inserted that final shot. And again, I think that was put in maybe because Toho now wants you to incorporate that rule now maybe in their films. Either that or they played it to the fans. Saying that he didn't actually die,
or just like the lore, what you mentioned, that Godzilla can never die.
That's what I'm saying. Toho wants you now to have something like that in the film to be like, yeah, he was defeated, but he actually didn't die. I wish that was left out, to be perfectly honest, because I think, again, like if they had kept Noriko dead, it would have impacted and made the film even better. And it's already a stellar film as it is, but I still think it could even be even better. Just even making a couple of those changes like that, I think could significantly even make this thing like that Vince McMahon meme you see on the internet, like the meme, like that. the overall soundtrack, I own the soundtrack, but I have yet to listen to it, and that's going to be one of the things I'm going to do for
Yeah,
the.
it's just it would just take just under an hour of your time, and I think it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that because I know through the trailers and now I haven't seen the movie. Um, I like what this composer did, like the very haunting music that
Mhm.
he has in this film.
Yeah,
It's
suspense and
it's
kind of that ambiance and Hollywood esque too. It really fits. Definitely fits the film.
Oh, one quick comment I forgot to make when we did special effects talk. I love the fact that when Godzilla shoots his atomic ray, it actually damages him a little bit. I just want to say,
That and also damages like the buildings and stuff around when he unleashes the atomic ray during that Ginza attack too.
yeah,
That was
I
pretty
forgot to
sweet.
mention that. But yeah, this soundtrack, at least the way I have listened to it through the film itself, um, I like it an awful lot. Um, I mean, Naoki Sato did an incredible job here. It's very good. I can't say it enough. I like it. And I'm really
Yeah,
looking forward to having deeper thoughts about it when I actually sit down and listen to it.
yeah, it's like a much more involved kind of gets away from your usual Godzilla or kaiju score, whereas feels like it would feel a little bit hokey, maybe, and not quite as deep toned compared to a lot of the other Hollywood film scores, and that where this time around it feels very professionalized and that Hollywood style type of film score that you would hear from a lot of the movies nowadays.
And I'm going to say something that I think some fans are going to find very controversial. I don't want to hear any more Ifukube music in any future Godzilla films.
Maybe maybe some settle tones, but maybe make it a bit better in a way. Maybe kind of like Bear McQuarrie's. I think that's Bear McQuarrie. Yeah, he kind of did his rendition of it, made things a little bit different in a way, but yeah,
like in King of the Monsters. Yeah, like if you did something like that, I don't have really a problem with it. But I'm talking about actually using his stuff. I'm not saying I dislike his. I'm not saying that at all. I love Maestro Ifukube. I adore his soundtracks. I adore his scores. I love what he did for the kaiju genre as a whole when he was alive and composing music for all those films he did. I don't want anyone to misunderstand me here. But here's the thing. Even when he was alive, they would get a different maestro like Masaru Sato to score other Godzilla films, for example. Nowhere in those films do you hear Ifukube style music. Did it with Return of Godzilla. No Ifukube. And then again, like Space Godzilla with Takayuki Hattori and other Godzilla films. Even Michiru Ushima, which seems to be a bigger fan favorite than I had thought. A lot of people like her music and her theme. And there's no Ifukube music present there. Not even a hint of it. And so why is it that there's this obsession, other than to pander to audiences, why is there this obsession to at least have that Ifukube Godzilla theme in there? Let music artists do what they wish. If they want to have a different theme, so be it. I think, for example, in the Dark Knight trilogy, the Batman theme that Hans Zimmer puts together for that trilogy, magnificent.
And the same goes for the Man of Steel. His rendition I really like too.
Yeah. Then like when you had Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, Elliot Goldenthal, I think, was the composer for those two films. He had his own version of what
Mm-hmm.
the Batman theme for those two movies was. Let the maestros put their own touch on it, because I know
Mm-hmm.
Ifukube was a really good composer, no question about it, and he casts a big shadow over the kaiju genre, and I understand
Yeah.
that and
As far
appreciate
as
that and
music
know
goes,
why.
yeah.
But his music is his own. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's disrespectful to someone like Naoki Sato, for example, to basically maybe come in and say, you have to use an Ifukube track or two here. I don't know if that's what happened. If he himself said, I want to use it, then that's different.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to leave that stuff alone. I want to leave it alone because I not only want these composers to put their own spin on Godzilla, because I think we're missing out on some potentially good, different themes
Mm-hmm.
for this character. But Ifukube's music was unique. It was tailored to not just the types of kaiju movies he was doing, but it was tailored to a particular time as well.
Right. Yeah.
If it was a Godzilla superhero type of film, like a Monster Zero, for example, the music reflected that.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, that film was produced in 1965. It's going to have a bit of a 60s flair to it as well. This movie, I don't think, warrants the use of anyone else's music other than Naoki Sato's.
Mm-hmm.
I just would like this music of Ifukube's to sort of be put to rest.
Yeah.
And unless other maestros come in and say, look, I want to put it in, then so be it. Okay. And again, I'm not, I don't, Ifukube, it's sort of like how some sports athletes want to end their career with a championship. Okay. Some of them stick around and retire X amount of seasons after having won a championship so they don't end out on top. Some people think that that could tarnish their legacy just a little bit because they didn't go out on top with winning a championship.
Mm-hmm.
To me, continuing to use Ifukube's Godzilla theme in movies that he himself is not composing because he's obviously gone, I think actually hurts his legacy just a little bit from a musical standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's there to be nothing more than to placate to Godzilla fans.
Yeah.
And I would like maestros to put their own spin, create their own theme, because I do think we are missing out on some potentially awesome new themes for Godzilla. Michiru
Yeah.
Shima did her own, and
Yeah.
people love her work. Why
And
won't they do that with these other composers?
yeah, and Sato, in my opinion, here did a phenomenal job with how he composed his music into this film. And yeah, missing out a great opportunity for something a bit different this time when it comes to a new suite for Godzilla, a much more updated version.
Yeah. And when I do think about this film, any music that I incorporate in my mind, hey, thank you, thumbs up. It is his version of the theme music to this film. Whether or not it's considered as Godzilla theme or not, I'm not sure because, again, I haven't actually listened to the soundtrack on its own. But I just want that to be done because I love it. Again, I don't want people to misunderstand me. And know in this fan base, there will be people that don't care and say I'm not a true whatever bullshit. If that's the case, then up yours. But like, let Ifukube's music stay with his films. I do love the guy. I love the work he did. I love that stuff. Legend, rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
But let current maestros do their own work. It's their film, their job. Be respectful. Let them do their own twist on a Godzilla theme. Ifukube's music, built for different types of kaiju films in different times.
Mm-hmm.
Let's leave it there. And then, let's leave Ifukube with Ifukube.
Yeah. Otherwise, is there anything else you want to touch upon, or?
I'm sure that we'll probably missing something. that whole technical thing we had earlier, like that forever, like fried my train of thought.
Yeah, because I know we've already sort of done the story and plot, and then the characters kind of meld together there. Then we talked about the visual effects, and we talked about the score. Just talked about the score of the film here. I can't really think of anything else. Should we just kind of go into our final thoughts on the film?
Yeah, let's do that.
With sort of the few nitpicks that we've sort of touched upon on this film, I would say overall it's a far superior film. I would say by far the best Toho Godzilla movie that we've ever gotten from Toho. Light years better than Shin Godzilla in that regard.
One of these days, I want us to have a podcast where we are basically comparing and contrasting basically Godzilla Minus One versus Shin Godzilla and why Minus One is better.
Yeah. Even though it's sort of panders, but I would say it panders in a good way. Sort of, because I've seen some Easter eggs of certain things, even like down to the Easter egg of when after the aftermath of Ginza. I don't know if you've noticed this, but when he had got like some of the scientists using the Geiger counters and stuff in the rubble, you notice a couple of those guys. One of them was wearing this kind of specific hat and then glasses in the way. I would say it harkens back to the original.
I saw that too.
Yep. Like the original guy from back in 1954. That was,
I forget the actor's name,
sweet.
But yeah.
That's the sort of good sort of pandering, but they don't like put a lot of that pandering in your face, except with a couple of nitpicks here and there that we've just gone over. But this is sort of the perfect way on how to do some things. Maybe sort of a nod and kind of get some recognition to some of those certain things in there, but not just pander for the sake of pandering and recycling things without doing some remastering or sort of recreating to add on to some of those certain things. This is a far superior Toho Godzilla movie. I think everyone's probably going to at least agree on. And I know I've seen some comments here and there on social media where some people is like, oh, Shin Godzilla better than the minus Goji. And it's like, not at this point, no.
No, you have serious brain damage if you think that. I use the Bill Cosby term. That's brain damage.
and also, it's just the film itself. It's really brutal. By far, the most brutal Godzilla film out there. Just seeing like Godzilla, chomping at some of those guys at the very beginning when he was the Godzilla source. At that time, you never seen Godzilla do that to any human whatsoever, maybe except for the usual stomping around and all that stuff, but just it's
not actually biting people.
Yeah, that it's like when I saw that, I was like, holy shit. Because like you're not even used to that sort of thing, and that's also sort of kind of the newness that we need in this franchise. Something new and something sort of out of nowhere, out of the ballpark.
And this time it worked.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just a far superior film. Also, a tearjerker in a way in certain aspects of the film too. So go ahead.
And if Jason cried, you know it's a real emotional film because this guy, he could see someone kick puppies and he'd be like, mm.
Shut the fuck up. You're full of shit, you know that.
I know.
But yeah, and the visual effects again far superior to Shin Godzilla, and also you can definitely tell out of the 6 to 7 years that they've really improved their game to kind of get it up to the level of Hollywood style films, as far as visual effects. And there's far more detail into everything when it comes to the visual effects aspects, and it really shows. And with a lot of the Hollywood movies, they sort of have most of the action in the dark just to sort of hide all the impurities. As far as this goes, a lot of the action is dealt in the daytime, and it kind of shows you that they're not afraid to show all the fantastical details, not only into Godzilla, but as well as the destruction. That's how confident they are in their improvement in visual effects after 6 to 7 years. Whereas Shin Godzilla, they show most of the action and everything, majority of the action in the dark. They're short to hide some of the impurities like Hollywood films, but here they were much more confident this time around to have a lot of that action in the daytime. And the characters really good in this one, probably one of the better casts in a Godzilla film here to kind of tell the story, even though it's not quite as complex as some of the other ones out there, but they really do the job that they needed to do to bring this film to life here. And when it comes to the score, again, phenomenal score, Hollywood level type of music. And again, the critique here is should just only use one Godzilla theme in here, two sort of overdoing it, but having three of them, even though they're a little bit different from one another, having three, I would say, in my opinion, is just overkill at that point. But other than that, I would say one of the best Godzilla films in the franchise, not coming from Hollywood, but from Toho themselves in that matter. And that sort of tells you right then and there. So I would give Godzilla -1 an A. It's
I will say
a really good movie with a few nitpicks and critiques in it, but I'm still going to give it an A.
I would say that, and I think I've said this when we went through the anime trilogy, that the anime trilogy, even though it's not live action, I thought those were the best Godzilla films that Toho put out since Godzilla 2000. And I still think those are really some of the best Godzilla stories ever told. And part of that, yes, is the fact that it's one story over 3 movies that is what, 5.5 hours total to tell a story. So if you have that much time, of course, you're able to,
time span,
put in all the smallest details that you want for character, story, etc. So, it has that advantage. But, yeah. Godzilla -1 is really what Shin Godzilla should have been. And I understand, again, like I said earlier, Shin Godzilla was going for something different. It wasn't sort of a redoing or retelling of 54, nor trying to get to Godzilla's roots. But at the same time, the way that particular movie mishandled virtually everything, to the Godzilla character, to character work, you know, the story as a whole. To me, imagine this, okay? Imagine that scene in Ginza where Godzilla shoots his fire breath and you have that atomic mushroom. Now picture this. A poster of Shin Godzilla in front of the tanks and the Japanese capital. Then Godzilla shoots his ray, and then you get the mushroom cloud. That's what this movie does to Shin Godzilla. It atomic blows it up. And no movie is perfect, but this movie is pretty darn close. It is one of the best live action Godzilla movies ever. I still need to see it a number of more times to really see, because I'm not quite sure where I put it. I think I will put it maybe in my top 5, but I'm not quite sure yet.
Yeah, for me, I would at least put it in the top 10 for right now.
Easily top 10 for me too.
Until we view more of it.
Whether or not it reaches like top 5 level, even top 3, I still want to see it a number of more times. But regardless, here's the thing. If I'm talking about favorites, it may not be top 5. And I'm talking about favorites, okay? But if I'm talking about what I think as objectively possible as I can, what I think are the best ones, not my favorites, but what I think are the best, this one is actually at the top, if not behind the anime trilogy. I'm putting the anime trilogy as one movie because it is one story. So to me, it battles with the anime trilogy as far as like the best Godzilla films ever made. This movie really captures horrors of war and tragic loss, but yet the rethinking of norms and traditions and what it means to be a true warrior, a true hero, that there is nothing wrong to have not seen combat, that this film really does an exceptional job of showing psychological damage to people in the face of war. The unfortunate thing, however, is that the film pulls back a few of its punches. It keeps Noriko alive. And what was the other problem I had?
The score. Some of this.
I'm talking more about the story. But the fact too that I think the showing of Godzilla regenerating was something they shouldn't have done either. But to me, bringing Noriko back was not a good move. And then while I'm at the criticisms, again, I would have liked a little bit more of our characters like Captain, Noda, and Kid, even Noriko herself.
I would say maybe the other thing is it felt like sort of forcing Noriko into the story, maybe kind of give a background of her being a longtime friend of the main character or something of the sort.
Yeah, like you're rewriting her character, yeah. But I don't think those things, and there are a few other nitpicks, like I said, like the Godzilla theme during the Ginza thing, I think was really, no, that should not have happened. To me, that was a bad decision. In the other two moments, it's fine, I guess. I still would prefer, again, to leave Ifukube's music out. This for me was a bit of a tearjerker at points too. Like I told my wife the other night, I said, because I wondered initially before I saw it Friday night if this was going to be appropriate for our son to see. Because to me, again, like from the trailers and stuff, to me, it seemed like this was going to be really intense. And on some level it is, but it was nowhere near as intense as I thought it was going to be. And part of that is the film's fault because, again, for the umpteenth time, seeing Noriko alive, I still, that does bother me a little bit. But this is a very moving film that if you're a parent, I think it hits you in the gut a little bit harder. That's what I told my wife. And I think people who have seen combat, this will hit them as well. That's not to say that if you're someone like myself who has never seen combat, or if you're like Jason who has never seen combat and is not a parent, that it's not going to affect you. Because it can. I mean, by God, if you're a human being, you should be like welling up at least once during this film. Even though I didn't like it, I still welled up a little bit when he saw Noriko at the end and he was just like bawling his eyes out that she was still alive.
Yeah.
Like, to me, like I said, I am a sap for happy endings, but I still thought with what this film was trying to do, that was not a good decision to make. Godzilla Minus One has it phenomenal effects work. There's still a few issues with movement that they got to work out, but by and large, it is definitely a huge improvement even from 7 years ago with Shin Godzilla. The score, at least how I have listened to it through the film itself, incredible as well. Naoki Sato is I hope he comes back for a future film. Whether it's a sequel to this or not. I honestly hope there is no sequel to this film. I really hope that there isn't, because to me, it will minimize how powerful this film is. Because I don't want them to do with this movie like they did with Gojira, and you start bringing, but then again we wouldn't have the Godzilla franchise, so something's got to give.
Or any of the kaiju that have been sprouted up.
Yeah, so it's like, well, then you would just have Gojira, and I wouldn't have the figures here. I wouldn't have these behind me and all that.
Yeah, so it's a definite pro and con situation.
Yeah, damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario.
Yeah.
So I just hope with this one there is no sequel. This one is almost near as perfection as I think you can get. Definitely has a few issues, but I don't think any of them hurt the film so much that it minimizes its effect. Could have used a little bit more Godzilla in my opinion, but again, that's a nitpick. Final thought is Godzilla Minus One needs to be seen by every Godzilla fan. I think even if you are a newbie to Godzilla and this is your first film that you're going to see, like, see it. Like, you don't need to see Gojira necessarily. You don't need to see any of that. Go see this. Make this your introductory.
1985, you don't need to see that, or Godzilla, like the American version of it. This is a definite introduction of how the whole Godzilla lore comes into play, and sort of you get everything sort of that have sprouted up in the Godzilla lore over the years into one film.
Yeah, and I mean, it takes a few minor twists to the lore, but in many respects, it's kind of the same thing as far as his origins and what have you. This is a film every kaiju fan needs to see if you haven't already. And I think this will continue to be one of the heavy favorites within the Western fandom. Heaven forbid, though, if the fan base goes cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs again, that within, let's say, 3 to 5 years from now, all of a sudden it becomes like a 50-50 or worse, where they start bashing. Hopefully not.
Or maybe when we get to G Festival, kind of see how everyone feels about it. So hopefully it's majority positive going in, and I
still think it will be. I honestly, truly believe yeah, I think there will be some people that will be, those kinds of people, but I don't think it'll be that bad moving forward. I think even 10 years from now, it'll still be very much beloved, even with Western fans.
Because now you're starting to get a little bit of a shift when it comes to the 98 Godzilla now after
Not really.
a couple of decades. Well, I've actually sort of started to notice a little bit of a shift in it after
The
all
only
these years.
shift with that one I've seen is that people say, okay, it's a good monster movie, but not a good Godzilla movie. There's always that stupid little caveat that they put at the end. It's a good monster movie, but not a good Godzilla movie.
Sort of the little
spin
cope.
talk is what it is. It's talking out of both sides of the mouth is what it is. But Godzilla Minus One is phenomenal. Even my son, I asked him when we walked out of the theater last night, I said, what'd you think of it? He looked at me and he said, best one ever. Which I thought he would say he loved it for sure. I figured he would say that. But I still thought he might think like Godzilla vs. Kong or one of those other movies was going to be his favorite, if not what he thought was going to be better than this one. He said best one ever. And then when my wife asked him after a while when we got home, she asked him what he thought of it. And he said the same thing. He said best one ever. And he might, and I have to say this though too, this was his first Godzilla movie that I've seen in a theater. So maybe that has something to do with it as well, perhaps. But Godzilla Minus One.
We'll have to see when Godzilla X Kong comes out. We'll kind of have to ask him again after you get done watching that one.
Yeah. Godzilla Minus One, near perfection. Has, few little nitpicks about it, a couple things I will legitimately criticize it for, but I don't think it condemns the film. With all that being said, I may change my rating on it in a little while, but for this moment in time, I'm giving it an A-. Actually, no, screw it. I'll give it an A.
I was going to say, I'm a little bit surprised.
Right now, though, I will just say this with this caveat. Right now, until I see it handful more times or whatever, I'm going to put it just behind the anime trilogy as far as what I think is the best Godzilla story ever told. And I put the anime trilogy there not just because I like it, but because I think character work, how they build the story, how they complete everything is perfect storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Not just in a Godzilla film, but just in any movie.
Yeah.
So to me, the anime trilogy is like the model of perfect storytelling. This comes awfully close.
Mm-hmm.
But Godzilla Minus One, you need to see it. Support this film with your monies. Give it an A. It's incredible. See it. See it. See it. See it. Minus one. Minus one. Go see it. I'm serious. Go now. What are you still here for? We're just going to have housekeeping and like left. I mean, that's it. Go see it right now.
Yeah. So again, that pretty much concludes today's show. And thanks for watching. After this episode, we're going to be going back to our usual Saturday showings at noon. But we're going to be taking a little bit of a break, noon Central Standard Time. But we're going to be taking a break for the next few weeks and getting prepared for the year-end Kaiju Palooza episode, which is our annual year-end episode where it's at least 2.5 hours. But
already 2.
But it can go on as far as 4.5 hours like last year's, and I hope we don't do that again. So yeah, before we sign out, again, if you see a subscribe button down below or above wherever you're watching us from, make sure to hit that subscribe button, as well as smash or stomp the like button. And if you have any comments regarding to what we just discussed with Godzilla Minus One, make sure to have your comments down below the video. And you can find Daikaiju Network everywhere in one place at our Linktree URL right there on your screen /Daikaiju Network. And we're available on the following video platforms such as YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Facebook, and X/Twitter. And also available on the following audio platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and Podbean. And we have both video and audio versions of each of our episodes right on website right there smack dab on your screen at daikaijunetwork.com.
With that, thank you so much for joining us. Again, sorry about the technical difficulties. That's technology's fault. But we will see you in several weeks.
Indeed. We'll see you guys next time.